The Department of Health's Chief Financial Officer, Lerato Madyo, and the Chief Executive Officer of Tembisa Hospital, Dr. Ashley Mthunzi, have been placed on precautionary suspension effective from today. This is to pave way for investigations into allegations of improper procurement at Tembisa Hospital. The case is allegedly linked to the murder of former Chief Director of Finance and whistleblower Babita Deokaran. Deokaran was killed just a year ago after exposing corruption at the hospital. Meanwhile, Gauteng Premier David Makhura last week announced the appointment of an independent investigator, while the SIU also announced that it had started its own probe. Let's get some reaction. Gauteng Premier spokesperson Vuyo Mhaga joins us now for more on the action against the CFO. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Talk to us about some of the processes that had to follow before this action was taken.
No, thank you very much, Sisimpo, and good evening to yourself as well as to your viewers. As you are correctly saying, the Premier sometime last week had made an intention that he will actually request a forensic to really look at the matter of the Tembisa hospital, and subsequently to that, he then consulted with the legal team within the office just to make sure that the legal opinion, to make sure that everything basically is in line, and then we engage with SIU as the institution or the entity that must actually do this part of probe. As you'll appreciate that the Gauteng government and SIU have got an MOU that actually makes us to move quicker in matters of corruption. So basically today, the Premier was announcing that particular decision and those particular processes.
You say that the motion is to help you move quicker. Do you think that you could have made this move a lot quicker? Because we know 2 weeks ago there was already protest action outside Tembisa Hospital with the opposition party DA holding a protest there, speaking about mounting evidence that is before them and really expressing dissatisfaction. Do you think you could have moved a lot sooner than this?
Well, possibly, but as I'm saying, as you'll appreciate, we don't have the privilege of just moving without really getting some opinion on legal issues, so that whenever that you move, you really don't move under the pressure and only to buckle up at a later stage. So it is always quite advisable that the legal part and the legal opinion is able to be provided, and we are quite clear exactly of what we want, and make sure that we don't do what we call a false start. So we start something only to we've actually backed it up. That's why it was very important for us to basically move. After we have satisfied ourselves, then we have actually engaged with the SIU, and the SIU has always been ready to really assist Gauteng to get rid of corruption within our shores.
A skinny jeans order with a 500,000 price tag, I understand, is one of the reasons that prompted you to take action. Talk to us about that part of this really shocking revelation.
Well, it's not necessarily only that. It's actually quite broader issues that will have obviously be emanating, and we'll want to really give the SIU to really do its work and to go a bit deeper and investigate what has been happening in that particular hospital and to check what they'll actually give it to us. So it might not necessarily be one issue that propels us to really go there, but there's been a lot of report that has been emanating from society and also from our colleagues in the media. So that will be what actually the SIU will come into. So without necessarily, proactively saying this is what they will be looking for, we want to give them the space to make sure that they probe everything. And I think they've got a history of actually moving quite faster in the recent past, and we hope that they will actually move with speed as they normally do.
How serious are these allegations? Because we're also learning that there may possibly be a link to whistleblower Babita Deokaran, who was the former Chief Director of Finance.
Well, allegations of corruption are always serious. If you have to speak to any South African, they will tell you one of the major problems that they are facing in this particular country is issues of corruption, and that obviously erode the confidence and the benefit that is supposed to go to the downtrodden and the poor. So anyone who really accused of corruption, we take it quite seriously, and that's why in the past we have acted. You'll know that there are about 9 officials that are ongoing through the suspension because of corruption. So this issue will not necessarily be different, but we want to give the SIU the space to make sure that they do their work quite promptly as well as professionally as they always do.
Premier Makura had also confirmed that the head of department recently received threats from anonymous sources. Perhaps expand a little bit on that.
Well, the HOD did receive those threats and communicated with the Premier, and the Premier moved swiftly to make sure that the Lieutenant General Mawela is able to put the necessary first protection around the HOD, as well as, to probe where this can be, because we really don't wind ourselves where we were a year ago, where Mr. Peter was obviously murdered, who was actually doing a very critical work to unearth some of the corruption that was happening within the province. So we did not want to really find ourselves again to have another high-ranking official, dead. So that's why the Premier needed to move quite swiftly and make sure that he conducts, the highest police in the province, Lieutenant General Mawela, to make sure that all things are actually done to protect the HOD.
What has the Gauteng Premier's sentiment been around this move? Of course, making sure that action is taken in some form or fashion, but looking at the seriousness of a year having passed since Babita Deokaran's killing, and not much really happening in court when it comes to holding and pinning people accountable. What are the department's sentiments around that, and the possible link of this precautionary suspension to Deokaran's killing?
Well, you'll know that although on our end we'll obviously want justice to move faster than it is actually doing, but it's not necessarily our space, but we're actually hoping that they will actually move faster. But it's safe to say we are continuously putting measures in place to make sure that almost everyone in the senior management actually has gone through the lifestyle audit, in particular the guys in the procurement. We are working closer with a lot of, as I've said, with SIU, the public protector. The Premier will be meeting with, the Minister of Justice to make sure that we also close up to make sure around the protection of the whistleblowers, because if we can't protect the whistleblowers, we won't be able to get the information that we want and to make sure that we get rid of corruption. So we are using all measures really in our space to make sure that we strengthen, the fight against corruption, and we actually deal with clean government. That will be the benefit, as I'm saying, of the working class and the poor in our country.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Let's leave it there for now. Gauteng Premier's spokesperson, Vuyo Mhaga, talking to us more about the action against the CFO at Tembisa Hospital. Let's